Samantha Markle has never told me a lie. Every single thing that she has said about either you or Meghan has checked out factually.
Before this story takes us into family feuds, dusty documents, and hidden hospital files, it begins with one woman, Samantha Markle. For years, people laughed at her, dismissed her, painted her as nothing more than a jealous half-sister chasing the spotlight. But Samantha wasn't craving fame. She was chasing something far more powerful, the truth. She was the first one who whispered, "Something isn't right about Meghan's age." Not out of spite, but out of certainty. The kind only a sister could have. Samantha didn't shout into microphones or create drama for headlines. No. She quietly spoke facts, memories, family photos, moments that couldn't be staged or rewritten. She didn't speculate, she remembered. It was Samantha who first pointed straight at Meghan's timeline and said, "Look closer. None of this makes sense." And back then, no one believed her. Her voice was brushed aside. But now, piece by piece, the world is realizing that everything she said, every small detail, was real. Because when Thomas Markle, her father, later stepped up and confirmed it all, that was the moment Meghan's carefully built royal image began to tremble.
To be honest with you, I love both my daughters. I'm not happy with what one of my daughters is doing. And I don't know what caused her to do this. We've had this conversation before. She's telling lies.
Samantha didn't create this mystery. She just refused to bury it. She was the first domino to fall, the first crack in that polished royal mirror. She was the one who had the courage to say out loud what others only whispered. And when she spoke, the truth couldn't stay hidden anymore. Once her father confirmed her words, a second door opened, one filled with numbers that didn't fit. Because Meghan Markle's official birth date, August 4th, 1981, is printed everywhere. Royal records, biographies, palace press releases. It's treated like sacred fact. But as Meghan's fame grew, Thomas noticed things that didn't add up. Her stories, her interviews, the way she described her childhood and career milestones. They didn't match what he remembered as her father. And when that doubt appears, you start digging. You start connecting dots. You start whispering to yourself, does this timeline even make sense? For Thomas, it didn't. And soon, people close to Meghan began asking the same quiet, uncomfortable question. Was Meghan Markle really born in 1981? Because if she wasn't, then everything that came after, her Hollywood years, her royal marriage, even her pregnancies, might be built on a foundation that never existed. Then came the discovery that changed everything. It didn't come from gossip blogs or royal insiders. It came from an old magazine, a forgotten copy of 17, dated March 1997. Back then, every teenage girl flipped through 17 for inspiration and dreams. And on page 90, in a tiny corner of print, was a name that no one noticed at first. Meghan Markle, age 21, not 15, not even close, 21. If she were really born in 1981, she would have been 15 in 1997. But the magazine, printed long before she was famous, said 21. That's not a typo, that's a 6-year difference. A piece of paper frozen in time with no reason to lie. Long before royal publicity, long before anyone cared about her age, it was written there clearly. That one page quietly destroyed the myth, because it suggested Meghan wasn't born in 1981 at all, but closer to 1975 or 1976. And when people found that magazine again, the internet exploded. Because this wasn't just a detail, it was a different life. It changed how everyone saw her. Instead of a fresh-faced 20-something breaking into Hollywood, she may have been a woman nearly 30 trying to make it in an industry obsessed with youth. It changed the context. It changed the perception. It changed everything. But then came the next question, the one that really mattered. If that magazine was right, why would her official age be wrong? This is where the curiosity turned into an investigation. Because once you find one document that doesn't fit the royal narrative, you can't unsee it. The story started splitting into two timelines, two versions of one woman. Version 1, the ink version. This is the palace-approved Meghan Markle, born August 4th, 1981. 44 years old in 2025. A neat, unshakable fact. Version 2, the pencil version. This one comes from Samantha's memories, Thomas's confirmations, and that old 17 magazine. Here, Meghan isn't a millennial actress. She's a woman born around 1975 or 1976, which would make her nearly 50 today. And this is where the real story begins. Because if one of these versions is false, then which life has been built on the lie? Which milestones were created to support it? And most importantly, why hide it at all? That's when the story shifted to something even more sensitive. Something age directly affects: pregnancy. In royal life, age isn't just a number, it's a crucial part of the story, especially when motherhood enters the picture. When Meghan and Prince Harry announced they were expecting Archie, the world swooned. The photos, the soft lighting, the carefully curated joy, it looked like a royal fairy tale. But beneath the smiles, the timeline didn't quite fit. If Meghan was really born in 1981, she was 37 when pregnant with Archie, already in what doctors call a geriatric pregnancy. It's a cold term, but it means closer monitoring and stricter medical care. But if she was actually born in 1975 or 1976, she wasn't 37, she was 42 or 43. That changes everything. Doctors treat pregnancies over 40 very differently. They require frequent tests, risk management, and often hospital stays. And yet, when Harry described Meghan's birth story in his memoir Spare, something didn't align. He spoke of a serene, candlelit room at Portland Hospital, calming music, birthing balls, a peaceful recovery. It sounded cinematic, beautiful, but medically, it didn't make sense. Sources close to Portland Hospital confirmed that this kind of relaxed setup would never be approved for a high-risk mother. And Meghan, by her age, fit right into that category no matter which birth year you believe. That's when the red flags started multiplying. Because according to Harry, Meghan gave birth, received 2 epidurals, recovered, and was discharged within 2 hours. 2 hours. Let that sink in. The drive from Portland Hospital to Frogmore Cottage alone takes around an hour, which means everything, labor, recovery, stabilization, paperwork, and discharge, would have had to happen in 60 minutes. That's medically impossible. After an epidural, a mother can't even stand, let alone walk. Doctors need to monitor blood pressure, check for side effects, confirm the baby's stability. The process takes hours, sometimes 6 or more. And if, as some quiet whispers claimed, Meghan showed early signs of preeclampsia, a dangerous pregnancy condition, she wouldn't have been discharged at all. Not that quickly. The timeline collapses immediately. The story the palace gave us, of a calm, glowing mother leaving the hospital in record time, simply doesn't fit. Put all these inconsistencies together, and a chilling thought forms. Was this story crafted to hide something the public wasn't supposed to see? Now the puzzle pieces lie scattered on the table. A father's quiet confession, a magazine frozen in time, 2 birth years that can't coexist, and a birth story that defies logic. None of them scream for attention. They just sit there quietly, stubborn and undeniable. And when you step back and look at them all together, it doesn't feel like a fairy tale anymore. It feels like a constructed narrative, refined to perfection for public eyes, while the messy truth stayed hidden beneath polished ink. Because once you see those contradictions, in her age, her milestones, her pregnancies, you realize something very human. Fairy tales don't fall apart like this. Only real stories do. Real stories have rough edges. Real stories have secrets. Real stories have timelines that don't quite match, no matter how hard you try to make them fit. And Meghan Markle's story is starting to show those cracks. Maybe that's why Thomas Markle finally spoke. Maybe that's why Samantha refused to stay silent. Maybe that's why that old magazine page suddenly matters so much. Because behind the glamour, the royal titles, the perfectly timed photos, there might be something else. Something rewritten. A life story that was reshaped to fit a moment rather than the truth. For years, the world accepted every word, every smile, every date. But now, the curtain is moving. And beneath the royal glow lies something unsettling. A rewritten timeline, adjusted milestones, a story scrubbed clean for cameras. But truth doesn't stay buried forever. Once you tilt the page toward the light, you start to see it. The faint pencil marks under the ink, the erased numbers, the overlapping memories that don't match anymore. And now that those marks are visible, the world can't unsee them. This isn't the end of Meghan's story. It's the beginning of its unraveling. Because if her age, her birth, and even her identity were rewritten, then what else was changed too? The world may finally be ready to find out. And as the story spreads, something strange begins to happen. The more people look back at Meghan's early years, the more pieces of her timeline begin to flicker. Like an old film reel showing scenes out of order, teachers, classmates, colleagues, all remembering slightly different years, slightly different ages. Some recall her graduating later, others remember her being older than her classmates. It's as if her life had been gently stretched to fit a narrative that looked better on paper. And then there's Hollywood. Back in the early 2000s, when Meghan was still struggling for her big break, the industry was ruthless about age. Casting directors wanted fresh faces, new graduates, girls who could play 20-something roles. To be 30 in Hollywood was to be invisible. So maybe that's where it started. A quiet adjustment, a tiny change in the numbers, one simple shift that opened 1,000 doors. A birth year that made her fit the part, literally. But the truth never disappears. It waits, patient, in the corners of old magazines and forgotten interviews, like that 17-page, quiet, factual, untouched. When people finally dug it out, they didn't just find an age discrepancy. They found a timeline that had been polished so carefully that the rough edges were now showing through. Because if she really was born around 1975, then by the time she was filming Suits, she wasn't in her early 30s. She was almost 40. And when she married Prince Harry, she wasn't a young actress stepping into royalty. She was a woman nearing midlife, stepping into a role the world believed belonged to someone younger. That's not a crime. But hiding it? That's a story. And this story isn't about jealousy or revenge. It's about control. Control over perception, control over image, control over what the world believes to be true. Because once a lie starts small, a few years here, a few edits there, it begins to grow. It feeds off repetition, until one day, it becomes history. Now the internet hums with speculation. Not wild conspiracy, but quiet realization. People rewatch interviews, notice the inconsistencies, hear the slips. Journalists dig up old records. Bloggers find yearbooks. Every piece seems to whisper the same thing. The official timeline is too smooth to be real, and maybe that's why Samantha's voice feels louder now. Because she never claimed perfection, she claimed truth. And in a world built on royal polish, truth sounds almost scandalous. When you listen closely, this story isn't just about Meghan. It's about how far someone can go to protect a version of themselves that the world demands to see. And it makes you wonder, if the timeline really was rewritten, was it to protect her or to protect the image she married into? Whatever the reason, the ink is cracking. The pencil marks are rising back through the paper. And now that the light is shining on them, no amount of palace polish can erase them again. Because every royal secret eventually meets its reflection. And sometimes, the reflection tells a story that was never meant to be heard.